Bluma Zygarnik was in her early 20s when she noticed something everyone saw and nobody had ever named. It was Berlin, late 1920s, and her advisor, a psychologist named Kurt Lewin, used to take his students to a cafe near the university after class. The waiter there could hold the most complicated order of the night in his head. 3 dishes, 2 substitutions, sauce on the side for one table, no onions for another. He held all of it. No notepad, for as long as the check stayed open. The second someone paid, the order vanished from his mind. Not faded, vanished. Zygarnik asked him, half joking, if he remembered what the corner table had ordered 20 minutes earlier, the one that had already paid. He had no idea. She took that into the lab. She had more than 100 people work through puzzles and small hands-on tasks, interrupting half of them partway through, letting the other half finish. Then she asked everyone to list, from memory, which tasks they'd done. The result, published in 1927, still gets cited today. An interrupted task is nearly twice as easy to recall as a finished one. The mind doesn't hold tighter to what's done. It holds tighter to what's left hanging. Researchers repeated the experiment decades later with tighter methods, and the effect held, weaker but real. And if you go looking, it's scattered through your week in shapes you never linked to the same mechanism. The show you paused halfway through, still taking up a corner of your head until you finish it. The red notification badge that bothers you more than whatever's actually inside it. The text you left unseen 2 days ago, that keeps surfacing every time you open the app for some other reason. None of those carry the weight of your sentence, but they all run on the same logic. Started, never closed, still in the queue. You have a sentence like that. Probably just one with that particular weight tucked somewhere you didn't choose to open. And it doesn't pick the time to come back. It picks itself. Yours lives in an elevator. Friday 6:04 in the evening, 9th floor. 14 months of a shared project with the same person, the one who sat 2 feet away, who learned how you take your coffee without asking twice, who held the conference room door for you so many times it stopped being something either of you noticed. 6 weeks earlier, at a project wrap party too loud for any real conversation, you'd come close to saying the same thing. You even opened your mouth. Someone yelled your name from across the room right at that moment, and you went. It wasn't cowardice that time, just bad timing. But the body files that kind of almost attempt the same way it files the real one, as the outline of a task that still needs to happen. Now it was actually Friday, the last one. She was leaving the company. Last box under her arm, a small plant balanced on top. A strip of packing tape still stuck to her finger, the kind you peel off the box and forget to throw away. The two of you laughed about something dumb in the hallway, you don't even remember what, just the sound of it, and stepped into the elevator with 2 people from finance who got off on the 7th floor. Then it was just the 2 of you, 4 seconds of quiet and the panel counting down. The elevator doors started to close. You had a line ready, not "good luck, it was great working with you." You'd already said that 3 times over the last few days to different people, her included. What was missing was bigger, the size of 14 months. Some version of "I'm actually going to miss you," not the polite kind of miss, the real kind. You don't remember the exact words today. You remember the shape of it in your mouth, loaded, and you remember the 3 seconds of silence before the doors shut. The kind of silence that looks polite but is really just fear of sounding too big for an elevator goodbye. The sentence stayed inside you, the doors closed on the outside of it. That was March. April came and the line surfaced twice, fast, no warning. Once brushing your teeth, once in the middle of a completely unrelated meeting, hearing someone say team transition. May barely had any at all. You'd honestly believed you'd closed it on your own, the way most things get closed, by slowly forgetting. Last night, a little after 2 in the morning, it came back whole. Not the person, the sentence. You were lying there, no particular reason to be thinking about any elevator, and there it was, word for word, carrying the same weight as March, the same shape in your mouth that never made it out. You probably called it nostalgia. Or you shook your head in the dark and thought, "That's strange, why now?" And that question, why now, is the only right question you asked all night. The answer isn't sentimental, it's operational. The technical name for what happened in that elevator is a task interruption, and your mind handles it in a way that's strangely close to a computer running background processes. A finished task, a sentence said all the way through, an email sent, a door closed for real, gets marked resolved and released from active memory, the cognitive equivalent of quitting a program and handing back the memory it was using. A task interrupted midway never gets that mark. It keeps running, eating up a sliver of background attention, exactly like a browser tab you forgot to close that's still sitting there, minimized, still asking for resources, still technically in progress. Or, if you want an image with less screen in it, like a plane that's already left its approach but hasn't been cleared to land, circling in a fixed loop above the airport, burning fuel just to stay airborne until the runway opens up. The tower hasn't forgotten that plane. It just doesn't have room for it yet. The elevator line was never processed as finished. It was processed as paused. In 2011, two researchers named Masicampo and Baumeister tested a harsher version of this. They gave a group of volunteers an important goal to complete later that day, and before they could complete it, ran a completely unrelated test: reading comprehension, word puzzles, tasks that needed a clear head. Whoever had the pending goal did worse. Not because they were consciously thinking about it. Most didn't even mention the goal when asked. Performance dropped anyway, as if part of their reasoning capacity had been rented out, held in reserve, unavailable for anything else until that account closed. And here's the detail that matters most. When the researchers let people write down a specific plan, not the goal itself, just when and how they'd get to it, performance snapped back to normal. Instantly. The goal was still pending. It just had a plan attached now, and that alone was enough for the brain to let go of the rented space. We are humming meaty of Cretu Hartone. That's the same mechanism, just measured in a lab instead of felt at 2 in the morning. An open task with no plan costs you, constantly, even outside your awareness. An open task with a plan, even something as small as, I'll say this out loud in the car this week, costs a lot less, because it stops needing round-the-clock watching. And here's the reason for the timing, because the timing isn't a coincidence or a punishment. At 2 in the morning, most nights you're not doing anything that needs foreground attention. No meeting to finish, no message to answer, no screen competing for your eyes. It's the one stretch of the day when the background processes stop fighting something louder for space, and whichever pending task is oldest, or carries the most weight, floats to the top on its own. Not because some part of you decided to haunt you, because that was, literally, the first open gap your mind had to run the night's audit. There's a name for this specific kind of pending item, and it's stranger than it sounds: prospective memory. Not remembering what already happened, that's ordinary memory. Prospective memory is remembering to do something that hasn't happened yet. Grab milk when I pass the store is prospective memory. And this is where most explanations of this topic miss the point. Your swallowed line didn't turn into a memory of the past. It turned into an open task pointing at the future. A very literal, very unglamorous part of your mental architecture is, right now, still trying to finish saying it, which is exactly why it doesn't fade the way an ordinary memory fades. Memories lose sharpness. Pending tasks lose none. They just go quiet until the queue clears. It's worth separating this from something similar that usually takes the credit it doesn't deserve: rumination. Ruminating is replaying an event over and over, trying to solve a problem that has no new solution to find, the mind circling the same spot, with no real task waiting at the end. The Zeigarnik effect is a different category. There's one specific, defined action that genuinely never got finished, and your mind is literally waiting for it to happen, the same way it waits for you to remember an important email. The practical difference is huge. Rumination has no exit, just time and therapy. A Zeigarnik task has an exit, and it's usually small. Sleep research runs into this too. Even without ever naming Zeigarnik, people who spend 2 minutes before bed writing a specific list of what they need to do tomorrow fall asleep faster than people who write about the day that already happened. It's not the writing itself that helps. It's the open task finally getting a safe place to live, a page, a list, instead of your working memory trying to hold onto it alone until sunrise. This is usually where most videos about memory try to sell you a productivity hack. This channel isn't selling anything. We'd rather open the box and show you the mechanism itself. No quick fix promise attached. If this kind of thing interests you, naming what your own head does without warning you, no spiritual dressing, no self-help formula, that's basically why we come back every week, and subscribing just means you won't miss it the next time this happens to some other invisible corner of your day. Think about how many sentences like this you're carrying without knowing the exact number. The compliment that stayed on the tip of your tongue at the wrong funeral to give a compliment. The "I was wrong" that died in your throat on a call that hung up first. The "that actually hurt" that became "no, it's fine" because fine leaves your mouth faster than the truth does. The "I forgive you" that stayed unwritten in a letter you started 3 times and never finished typing, still saved as a draft somewhere on your phone. Each one of those is an open tab, technically speaking. Each one is, right now, quietly using up a small slice of your attention. On its own, each tab weighs almost nothing. Together they build the mental background noise some people call tired for no reason, without knowing the reason is exactly that. Too many tasks running without a plan, competing for space, until one of them floats to the top of the queue, almost always around 2 in the morning. Almost always without warning. The next day, without much conviction, you pulled up her profile on some professional network. You sat there for maybe 15 seconds looking at the new job title at the top of the page, cursor hovering over the message button. You didn't write anything. Not because you lacked the nerve this time. You lacked a reason. Sending that line now, months later, out of context, would land strange for both of you, would turn something sincere into a confusing late message. You closed the tab. The urge didn't disappear because you talked yourself out of it. It just stayed exactly where it was, only now carrying one more data point. Finding her again was never actually what would fix it. And here's where the whole thing flips from what you probably assumed. You don't visit the elevator because you're stuck in the past. You visit because, in a very literal part of your mental architecture, the elevator hasn't ended yet. There's a way to close the tab, and the good news is it doesn't require finding your former coworker again years later in some awkward moment that embarrasses you both. In that same set of experiments, Zeigarnik found the effect eases once the task gets a symbolic close, not necessarily the correct ending, just one your mind recognizes as complete. Writing the sentence out in full, even if only for yourself to read later. Saying it out loud, alone, in the car, the thing that should have come out in the elevator. It sounds small, almost silly, it isn't. Working memory can't tell actually resolved apart from resolved enough. It's just looking for the stamp of completion. Give it that stamp and the tab closes on its own, even if the other person never learns it closed at all. That's what you did this week, without really planning to. Stopped at a long red light, alone in the car, you said the whole sentence out loud, the way it should have come out in the elevator. Nobody heard it. It didn't need to be heard. 3 seconds of silence on the 9th floor, that's all that stood between you and finishing that sentence back in March. And a task hung there for months, waiting for a stretch of empty enough time to be noticed again. That doesn't make you strange. It makes you exactly like anyone with a brain that works the way brains work. The guilt you felt last night, lying there in the dark, wasn't guilt over failing someone. It was just the sound a pending task makes when it finally gets enough room to be heard. It doesn't have to be an elevator. It can be a kitchen, a parking lot, a hospital hallway, a phone that rang one last time and you let it go to voicemail because you didn't know what you'd say. The setting changes. The mechanism underneath is always the same piece of prospective memory, the same middle-of-the-night audit, the same tower waiting for a clear spot on the runway. If you've ever had a line like that, and you have, everyone's got at least one tucked away. Drop it in the comments, even if you compress it into 3 words. Not because the video needs it, because there's someone reading the comments at the exact moment their own tab opens, and seeing someone else's tends to help close theirs. You might never run into the person from the elevator again. Most of us don't. And the line might come back once or twice more before it finally accepts the stamp you already gave it, alone in the car with nobody knowing. The plane eventually gets cleared to land even if the tower never says out loud that it did. Not because anyone needed to know. The only thing that was ever missing to finish it, this whole time, was you.